sector stakeholders. We had extended discussions on key issues such as Panama's plans to ameliorate water level challenges, the bidding processes used to allocate trends during time restrictions, and our concern that the Canal Authority was bringing in far more revenue during the crisis than it had before limits were first by water shortages. Both the government of Panama and Canal Authority did answer our questions very substantively. Canal Authority informed us they were already making changes to that allocation system. Unfortunately, Panama's 1.4 rainy season has for now alleviated most acute water supply issues of the canal, and normal transit volumes have been restored. That said, the Panamanian government and Canal Authority have, with the advice of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, developed critical plans to mitigate future water shortages. They also warned it is likely that at least one more period of reduced transit will occur before these plans can be fully implemented. Since our meetings, FCC continue to monitor Panama's progress in this front and examine other policy changes announced by Canal Authority. I do have continuing concerns, particularly about the auction rate slot allocation procedures. Not so much as they're right now because grants are not being rationed, but when another low-fall rainfall period occurs. As we learn more about Panama and Canal Authority, how we would handle the drought and receive more input from American stakeholders, the Commission does remain positioned to take appropriate action if warranted. While the Panama Canal's operations affect American commerce with high priority for the FMD under my chairmanship, it remains a high priority at the Federal Maritime Commission under Commissioner Sol's chairmanship, and I'm extremely pleased that it's a priority for this committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our next witness is Law Professor Eugene Kotorovich, who can explain Panama's treaty obligations and remedies the U.S. might see for potential violations. Professor Kotorovich is appearing virtually, and Professor, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman, Bruce, ranking member Panama, all members of the committee, I appreciate and regret the opportunity to testify before you remotely. I've been asked to discuss possible violations of treaty concerning permanent neutrality and operation of the Panama Canal entered into between two countries in 1977. I should say at the outset that determining whether a certain situation violates the treaty is a mixed question of law and fact, depending on the meaning of the treaty and the actual situation on the ground. I have not had any classified intelligence briefings on the subject, so I'm going to speak about the meaning of the treaty primarily. We shall see that under international law, each party to the treaty is entitled to determine for itself whether a violation has occurred. Now, in exchange for the United States seeking control of the canal, which it built and maintained, Panama agreed to a special regime of neutrality. The essential features of the regime of neutrality is that the canal must be open to all nations for transit, that's Article 2, equitable tolls and fees, Article 3, and exclusive Panamanian operation, Article 5, the prohibition of any foreign military presence, Article 5. Article 5 provides that only Panama shall operate the canal. Testifying about the meaning of the treaty at the Senate ratification hearings, the Carter administration emphasized that this prohibits foreign operation of the canal as well as the garrisoning of foreign troops. Now, Article 5 appears to be primarily concerned about control by foreign sovereigns. If Panama signed a treaty with the People's Republic of China, whereby the latter would operate the canal on Panama's behalf, this would be a clear violation. But what if Panama contracted to report operations with a Chinese state firm, or even a private firm influenced or controlled in part by the Chinese government? The Suez Canal Company was itself, before being nationalized, a private firm in which the United Kingdom was only a controlling shareholder. Yet this was understood to represent British control over the canal. In other words, a company need not be owned by the government to be in part controlled by the government. So the real question is the degree of de jure or de facto control over for a sovereign company. And scenarios range from government companies in an authoritarian regime, completely controlled, to purely private firms in an open society like the United States, but there's many possible situations in the middle. The treaty is silent on the question of how much control is too much, and as we'll see, this is one of the many questions committed to the judgment and discretion of each party. Now, turning to foreign security forces, the presence of third country troops would manifest via Article 5, but this does not mean that anything short of a People's Liberation Army base, flying the red flag, is permissible. The presence of foreign security forces could violate the regime of neutrality, even if they're not represented in organized and open military formations. Modern warfare has seen belligerent powers seek to evade international legal limitation by sizing their actions in civilian garb. From Russia's notorious little green men to Hamas terrorists hiding also as journalists, bad actors seek to exploit the fact that international treaties focus on sovereign actors. Many of China's man-made islands in the South China Sea began as civilian projects before being suddenly militarized. Indeed, this issue was discussed in the Senate ratification hearings over the treaty. Dean Ross said informal forces would be prohibited under the treaty. Thus, the ostentable civilian character of the Chinese presence around the canal does not in itself mean that it cannot represent a violation of the treaty. For example, these companies and their employees involve Chinese covert agents or other agents of the Chinese security force. So this leads us to the final question: who determines whether neutrality is being threatened or compromised? Unlike any other treaties that provide for third-party dispute resolution, the neutrality treaty has no such provision. Instead, the treaty makes clear that each party determines for itself the existence of a violation. Article 4 provides that each party is separately authorized to maintain the regime of neutrality, making it a separate obligation of each party. The Senate's understanding made accompanying the ratification also made clear that Article 5 allows each party to take, quote, unilateral action. Senator Jacob Javits, at the market period, said, while the word unilateral is abrasive, we can, quote, decide that the regime of neutrality is being threatened and act whatever means necessary to keep the canal neutral unilaterally. I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Professor. Our final witness, World Shipping Council CEO Joseph Kremick, can discuss the challenges faced by container lines moving goods to or from America through the Panama Canal. Mr. Kremick, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, and members of the committee. My name is Joe Kremick. I'm President and CEO of the World Shipping Council. The World Shipping Council is a global base of liner shipping. Our membership consists of 90% of the world's liner shipping tonnage, which are container vessels and vehicle carriers. They operate on fixed schedules to provide customers with regular service to ship their goods in ports throughout the world. Our focus is on sustainable, safe, and secure international ocean transportation. Nothing can be more important to the U.S. economy and WSE member lines to carry the trade that supports the U.S. economy than a sustainable, safe, and secure Panama Canal. As you've heard, using the Panama Canal to transit between the Atlantic and Pacific saves significant time and money. A typical voyage from Asia to the U.S. or East Coast can be made in under 30 days using the canal, while the same journey can take up to 40 days if carriers must take alternate routes. From a commercial trade perspective, the big picture is this. One of the world's busiest trade lanes is the Trans-Pacific. The Trans-Pacific is cargo coming from and going to Asia via the United States. Focusing in a bit, cargo coming from Asia and bound for U.S. Gulf and East Coast ports always transits the Panama Canal. Similarly, cargo being exported from U.S. and East Coast ports, a large share of which are U.S. agricultural exports like soybeans, corn, cotton, livestock, and dairy, also almost always transits the Panama Canal. The result is that 75% of canal traffic originates in or is bound for the United States. Some examples include the Port of Houston ships exports 14 billion containerized trade to Asia. The Port of New Orleans exported 27 billion seaborne trade to Asia, not all of which was on container vessels. The Port of New York and New Jersey exported 16.5 billion to Asia, and the Port of Savannah exported 13 billion to Asia. Our member lines are the largest users of the Panama Canal, and we carry the bulk of this trade. Global ocean we we've talked about, they're out in 2023. And historic low water levels that cause in Lake Tune, which feeds the canal lock, a unique system that is a freshwater feed as a result, as contrasted to an ocean-to-ocean system, which the French tried to fail, but which is actually acting so calm. These low water levels reduce transits from 36 transits a day to as low as 22 per day. Additionally, the low water levels required a reduction in maximum allowable draft levels, or the depth of the ship below the waterline, which for our members reduced the amount of containers they could carry through the canal. This resulted in a 10% reduction in import volumes for U.S. Gulf and East Coast ports, with the Port of Houston experiencing a 26.7% reduction. Looking forward, the volume of containerized trade coming to the United States remains at near record levels and continues to expand. The 2024 numbers are just out, and the inbound trade to the U.S. expanded 15%, which is second only to 17.5% inbound traffic we experienced during the pandemic-driven demand. Just yesterday, the Port of Houston reported record-breaking trade volumes with an 8% increase. More broadly, WSC Netherlands have transported 1.8 trillion in goods to and from U.S. ports, which represents 64% of all seaborne trade, contribute $2 trillion in economic output to the United States, produce 6.4 million U.S. jobs and over 442 billion wages and salaries. These goods are the clothes on your back, the shoes on your feet, and the phone likely in your hands or on your eyes. WS members support are working with the Committee on maintaining the sustainability, safety, and security of the Panama Canal. It's a vital issue and artery critical to U.S. trade. The record volume of cargo that our members continue to carry, it demonstrates our commitment. We appreciate the Committee's continuing support, commitment to the liner shipping industry, the U.S. maritime industry, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to questioning, and we'll start. Chairman Sell, Commissioner Fay. Are you aware of allegations from some vessel operators of disparate treatment, such as sweetheart deals or favorable rebates by Panama Canal transits?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. We have become aware of some complaints by cruise lines that said that they were not getting a refund of their canal tolls. When we looked into this, we found a Panamanian Executive Order 373 that specifically says that if a cruise line would stop at a certain port, that they would be refunded 100% of the fees. And as far as I know, that's the only instance where that exists.
We continue looking, but cruise ships is one area where we have something that billing.
Some press coverage says the Panama Canal is nominally independent, even though it provides a large share of the Panamanian government's revenue. Chairman Sell, briefly, can you describe how the FMC views the Canal Authority and the Panamanian government? Are they distinct entities or a single foreign government apparatus that controls the Panama Canal?
Mr. Chairman, our law is clear. It comes from the Marine Act of 1920 that there's only one entity. And in addition to that, our predecessor, the Federal Maritime Commission, was the U.S. Shipping Board, was formed in 1916 as a direct result of the Panama Canal. The very first chairman of that was George Washington Burgos, which was the very first administrator of the canal. So we look at it as one entity.
Yeah, mine is that, Mr. Chairman. It's like Georgia Port Authority and the state of Georgia. The Georgia Port Authority is clearly independent and gets bonds and governance, but ultimately, Georgia is responsible for it, the state of Georgia.
Right. So Panama was the very first Latin American country to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, and right now China is building a fourth bridge across the Panama Canal for car traffic and light rail. Chairman Sell, why should Chinese constructing a bridge near Panama City concern the United States?
Mr. Chairman, we all saw the tragedy that happened here, the Francis Scott Key Bridge incident, and the devastation that happened in Baltimore. We also saw recently what happened to the Suez Canal, where we had a ship get stuck in there. It's not only the construction of the bridge, but it's the removal of the bridge. As I understand, the Bridge of the Americas was built in 1961, and that would paralyze cargo traffic in and out of the canal.
Panama also recently renewed concessions for 2 container ports to a Chinese company, Hutchison Ports PVC. Of course, Chinese companies controlled by the Communist Party. How does China use control of those ports for economic gain?
Mr. Chairman, I am a regulator, competition regulator, and the Chinese ports that you're referring to, let me put them in a scope. The one on the Pacific port, the whole is roughly the same size as the Port of Houston. They do about 4 million containers a year. They have about 28 container trains. The one on the Atlantic is the same as my hometown of Miami. They do about 1 million containers. So where Roger Gunter in Port of Houston generates about $1 billion a year, and Heidi Webb in Miami does about 200 million, the Panama Ports Company paid zero for 20 years on that concession. So it's really hard to compete against zero. So that's our concern, our economic concern that we would have.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. All of the department with that you don't have this out. Either part is not like these 2 ports control the entrance to the canal. That is the Canal Authority that doesn't control that. However, I think it's of concern. But also, the Panamanian government thinks it's of concern too, because they're conducting their own audit of those deals. But we remain very interested as well.
So, Professor Kotorovich, I want to turn to the treaty. So, President Trump has made important arguments. Both China's control over canal infrastructure and exorbitant fees charged for canal transits are violations of the neutrality treaty. I want to highlight 3 specific provisions that you mentioned in your opening statement. Article 4 of the neutrality treaty requires both the United States and Panama to establish and maintain, quote, a regime of neutrality. Article 5 limits any foreign control by providing, quote, only the Republic of Panama shall operate the canal and maintain military forces, defense sites, and military installations within its national territory. And finally, Article 3(1)(c) requires that, quote, tolls and other charges be just, reasonable, equitable, and consistent with the principles of international law. In your opinion, as an expert in international law, the facts discussed here be considered violations of the neutrality treaty enforced right now between the United States and Panama?
So I think potentially they could, but it's impossible to say definitively without knowing more. In particular, about the degree of Chinese control and involvement in these companies. I think it's important to note that these port operation companies that operate ports on both sides, when they received their first contract, it was just a few months before Hong Kong was handed over to China. In other words, they received them as British companies, so it's very odd just a few months before the handover. Now, of course, since then, Hong Kong has been incorporated into China, has been placed under national security regime, and the independence of those companies has been greatly abridged. So significant state-owned companies involved also in the canal area would raise significantly grave questions. Additionally, I should point out that the understandings between President Carter and Panamanian Herrera, which were attached to the treaty and form part of the treaty, provide that the United States can defend the canal against any threat to the regime of neutrality. And I understand that as providing some degree of preemptive authority to the need not wait until the canal is actually closed by some act of sabotage or aggression, which is heard testimony would be devastating to the United States. But there is some incipient ability to address potential violations.
And your final point there leads to my last question, which is if the United States determines that Panama is in violation of the treaty, what is the range of remedies the United States would have for that treaty violation?
So I think it would be shocking to people to hear today, but when one goes over the ratification history and debates discussions in this body over the treaty, it was clear that the treaty was understood as giving both sides separately the right to resort to use armed force to enforce the provisions of the treaty. And it's not so surprising when one understands that the United States did an extraordinary concession to Panama by transferring this canal, which the United States built at great expense and maintained and operated, to Panama, gratis, and in exchange it received a kind of limitation, a limitation on Panamanian sovereignty, and agreed that the United States could enforce this regime of neutrality by force. Now, of course, armed force should never be the first recourse for any kind of international dispute and should not be arrived at sort of rationally or before negotiations and all kinds of good offers are exhausted. But it's quite clear that the treaty contemplates that as a remedy for violation.
Thank you very much. Ranking Brigham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. I think costs are critical. When you think about it, we're discussing costs. Why? Because consumers pay more when shipping costs are higher. Whether our farmers who are trying to export their products, as we saw during COVID, are literally our products getting left on docks, and importers are paying more if shipping costs are too high. So when we look at these incidents that we now see in our supply chain, and we had our own incident in Seattle where a container ship lost power and was careening towards our big Ferris wheel in the downtown right next to a freight terminal. Luckily, some passenger ferry vessels were able to push the tug from out of the direct path of severe devastation. So now we mentioned Suez, and now we mentioned Baltimore. We have our own Seattle experience. What do we need to do to make sure on the cost side that we aren't, that we're making the right investments from a security level to make sure that these kinds of incidents that could do great harm do not happen? And Commissioner Sola, since you were at U.S. Southern Command, what do you think we need to renegotiate or to have a conversation with Panamanians about the security level that we think needs to exist in Panama with this close proximity? And Mr. Maffei, will the audit lead to a discussion with Panama about those contracts? As I've said in my opening statement, I believe we should be very aggressive about U.S. involvement here in Latin America. I think Panama represents one of the biggest U.S. supporters in that region, but we should engage to get this right, both on the cost side and on the security side. So if I just hear your comments on each of those.
Thank you, Senator. Well, there's certainly even one incident is unacceptable from a safety perspective that you're citing. Our members work tremendously hard to, with the International Maritime Organization, the U.S. Coast Guard, and other entities to try to have the safest operations possible. But accidents do occur. They are rare. If you count the number of some 7,000 ports a year, but again, one is unacceptable. So continued investment, obviously, in U.S. infrastructure and review of reliable infrastructure as the tragic incident in Baltimore illustrated, unfortunately. We have bridges that need a hard look at whether or not they need additional fendering systems in LA, and investments in our ports and infrastructure can be helpful along this lines as well. And for our members, I can assure you that they continue to invest in the latest technology. We have over 600 new ships on order with some of the latest technology in the world. So we're playing a role there.
The U.S. get a big portion of that. So it's great. Commissioner Sola, what about just a new U.S. Southern Command, U.S. government conversation with the canal authorities and the government about the security level that we seek?
Thank you very much, Senator. First of all, the urban wing that I'm wearing today is decorative. I have not worn a uniform in 35 years. This is my personal experience here. I believe that the security of the canal has always been understood to be provided by the United States. Panama does not have military. And I always believe that there's been a close relationship with Southern Command that we will provide that. And it would be nice to see if we had a formalization of that in one way or another, because I don't believe that it's in the treaty at all.
Okay, so formalization of maybe a cybersecurity agreement. So I'm thinking you have accidents and then you have larger cybersecurity issues that you just have to be on top of. And what I don't like about anybody that has a backdoor is I'm for the United States advocating. Don't buy from people who have government backdoor. Don't do it. Because what are you going to do? At some point in time, you're going to regret that. Commissioner Maffei, what about this audit, and could we push Panama on these issues of looking at closer U.S. Infrastructure instead, particularly since, the sea change here is like what everybody said. Like everybody thought this was Hong Kong, then it turned into China. We didn't have an ambassador after that. Next thing you know, they made more aggressive postures. There became aggressive postures everywhere. That's why the United States saying no government backward technology, getting 5 technology nations and democracies to say the same thing, and evangelize that every day is going to help us. And so is the investment. What about getting stevedore business or some of that back into proximity under the audit?
Well, it is the Panama Comptroller's Office, and they're investigating contracts at Panamanian ports. We don't have any jurisdiction over Panamanian ports per se. But a broader point, I think, is very, very important. While we were down there, both of us heard, I think, several times that the Panamanians, the ones we talked about, would welcome U.S. companies coming in and doing a lot of this work. Frankly, their bids are not competitive with Chinese bids. Frankly, not that consistent because the U.S. companies can make more money doing things other places. But even if they were existent, it's difficult to compare bids when the Chinese bids are so heavily subsidized by China. So you're absolutely right. This is a problem. It's about many other areas of the world that we can get into if we want subsequent questions. That's
sometimes it's clear, but I think my major point is let's be a big maritime powerhouse. Let's revitalize our supply chains, drive down costs for consumers, and secure what we need to secure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. Very quickly, Commissioner Fay, you talked about the Chinese bids were heavily subsidized by the Chinese government. What would China's incentive be to heavily subsidize those bids to undercut American companies and other companies?
It's not a real short answer, but Senator, China made no secret of its business policies to gain influence throughout the globe. It's invested in 129 ports in dozens of countries. It runs a majority of 17 ports. That does not include this Hong Kong company, right? So that's just direct Chinese-owned ports. So it has been part of their road strategy, whatever we call it, of the maritime Silk Road for decades. So they believe that this influence, this investment in owning maritime ports is important to their economy.
Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to follow up on the ports and where we are on that. In 2021, Hutchinson was awarded those 2 ports, Port Balboa and Port Cristobal, in a no-bid award process. Can you tell me, does the United States have any authority or recourse with the Panama Canal Authority under our current agreement with Panama to rebid those terminal concession contracts? And perhaps, Mr. Konporovich, that's more in your purview?
Senator, both those ports were redone for 25 years, until 2047, I believe, and they have to pay $7 million. But the ongoing rate is for the Port of Houston and the Port of Miami size concession.
And it can't be rebid until after that date?
I believe that's what the comptroller's office is auditing, both the port and the contract. And that was done under the previous Panamanian administration. New administration came in and called for an audit of that contract immediately.
Mr. McCabe, you were talking about how to perhaps incentivize companies from the United States to be able to participate in a bid process that doesn't seem to be reasonable. And how do you think that the Panamanians would welcome a viable alternative? Are we in that position yet?
Certainly pursue this. This is outside so what the Maritime Commission does, but I haven't gone there. I haven't looked at this issue very carefully. I think it is very important. It was mentioned actually, Senator Cantwell just mentioned the academic program, so it's not like this doesn't happen, but it certainly has not been a huge priority of the United States to try to, if you will, match these bids to create programs widely available to U.S. firms in order to put together more competitive bids in these countries. Some of their domestic laws, I'm not sure offhand, but some of the domestic laws actually require that you go to the lowest bidder sometimes. It's ours do. So, yeah, I think if you're looking for places to do what policy to counter this, if you definitely want to look at whether the United States should be, for strategic and economic reasons, investing in infrastructure in maritime locations all over the world. China certainly has done that, and they've been doing it for 20 years, and it is a cow that is long left of the barn.
You mentioned investing in infrastructure. I was at the Panama Canal in 2023, and I learned at that time about the loss of fresh water with each ship movement through the canal. You talked about the trout in your opening comments. Fresh water is vital to the workings with the canal. How effective do you think investments in increasing that freshwater storage are? Are they happening? Are they viable? You touched on it briefly in your opening comments. But how do we see those investments happening so that we can have operational stability?
Yeah, it's a good question about my purview, but I will say that there's several investments. There is water reclamation, get pumping water up, etc. But the main thing, the main plan the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to help Panamanian Authority develop involves basic expansion of bringing in even more water at an elevation that you could then use to continue the canal. Now, there's a lot of issues with implementing that, not least with being indigenous people in those areas. Not a huge number, but certainly challenges like negotiating that, and also some other issues in the United States. There would be issues, but it is vital. You can, in that part of the world, you can make more fresh water available to make the canal and not have to be limited. However, it takes time, and there will easily be one more instance of severe limitations before that occurs, unless we get really, really lucky. There could be more than that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Budweiser.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz and Ranking Member Cantwell. At part of this hearing is a fundamental question about how the U.S. will compete on the world stage and maintain our national security. These are the questions that will define the future of this country. For American families to see lower prices and better economic opportunities, we have to meet this moment honestly and seriously. And I'm proud to have joined Senators Cantwell and Blackburn to reintroduce the Bipartisan Promoting Resilient Supply Chains Act, legislation that I led and authored in the House. This bill ensures that we have a national strategy to address our broken supply chains, whether it is a bridge collapse, a major global conflict, or unions striking for their rights. Interruptions and disruptions to our supply chains severely impact our economy. Our bipartisan legislation tackles this issue by elevating supply chains like the disruptions at the Panama Canal to be proactive and strategic. It helps us understand how we strengthen our ties with our friends and allies instead of pushing them into the arms of our competitors. I agree with Ranking Member Cantwell that we should have a hearing on how we compete with countries like China. I have great concerns about China's global infrastructure investments and any cyber threats to the U.S. Addressing these are our national security interests. With that, I'd like to shift to my first line of questioning, and it's for you, Captain Kremek. It's no secret that the canal has had issues due to droughts. Nor is increasingly frequent drought a new phenomenon. Do you believe the Panama Canal Authority did enough to anticipate the issues impacting the canal's operation?
Senator Roach, thanks for your question. They did the best, I guess, with the information that they had. I don't know that they anticipated a drought of that magnitude. I would say going forward, what Commissioner Maffei just discussed about the development of a second reservoir to feed into Lake Gatun, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers doing a feasibility review of that project, as well as some other projects that were mentioned, that seems to be a good path forward in terms of resiliency of the Panama Canal and making it a viable waterway up for 2050 and beyond.
I think part of the challenge is that it was recently started and time is of the essence. Did you think that the Canal Authority considered the obvious impacts from drought in its planning?
Senator Blackburn, I don't have that information on what they considered.
It is clear that the Canal Authority knew that this had an impact on shipping, and that enough hadn't been done to address it. Now that we are faced with this impact, what do you think the Canal Authority needs to expeditiously bring the canal back into full operation?
So they are back to full operation, is my understanding. Traffic is flowing well. But looking forward, I think it is taking a hard look at some of these infrastructure projects to make the canal more reliable, like I mentioned.
The Port of Wilmington is in my state. We're very proud of it. It's one of the leading importers of fruits. Delays to the canal have an outside impact on perishable goods like those that by board handles. Do you believe the Canal Authority can and should prioritize perishable goods or provide some other solution to support perishable goods? And will panel get into that?
Yes, ma'am. Let me just question, I'm not sure if my place exactly answered it, but you're quite right. So one of the complaints that we've heard is from container shippers, but mostly exporters. The export goods, as you say, and many other commodities too, are sensitive either because of market conditions at the time or because of actual perishability products, as you mentioned. However, there are container ships, and most of the cargo on the container ship is less time sensitive. In the bidding process that the Panamanian Canal Authority developed in order when they did have to ration these slots, it was a bid process, and the highest bidder got the first slot, got the less of a delay. The challenge there is every kind of commodity every kind of ship is big. So liquid natural gas, which is extraordinarily, all cargo on the ship is extraordinarily valuable, not that your agriculture not is valuable, but compared to the LNG, and very, very, means out, you're losing every delay. So they would far outbid the container shippers. Now, whether or not there's something that can be done specifically how the container, I'm not sure we will look into that, but it does remain a large concern. How do we figure out a way for the agriculture shippers who are not the main players on these ships, part of the picture for the United States? So very, very much, I wish I had a better answer. But
thank you for your answer. I'll be submitting some questions for the record because I know my time is running out, and I really want to understand also what we can do as the United States in terms of us being able to bid and be competitive in these bids. What can we do better? So I'll be submitting questions for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you back.
Thank you. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this important hearing. I appreciate the witnesses. I have questions. We're now primarily focused on Chairman Sola and Professor Kanarovich. So let's just, the setting in which you testified, two Chinese companies operate two huge ports on both ends of the Panama Canal. and the concession for these ports were extended in 2021 for a 25-year period without any bidding. Is that correct? Okay, so it was clearly a sweetheart deal, correct?
According to the press releases, the company paid back taxes of $150 million.
And the Panama Deputy Attorney General now objected to that. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
The comptroller of the country asked for an audit.
But someone objected to what was going on.
Objected to it.
So Chinese Communist Party officials are known to bribe other officials in countries all around the world who know that. They do it all the time. No offense to Panama, they don't have the greatest reputation of having officials who aren't on the take. So is there any evidence that the Chinese bribed people for this great concession? And if so, Professor, would that be a violation of the treaty? Let's assume we find evidence that Chinese Communist Party officials bribe Panama officials for this sweetheart deal. Would that be I think it's probably likely because Chinese do this everywhere. Would that be a violation of this treaty?
So in itself, that would not be a violation. What would be a violation is actual threats to the operation of the canal. However, to the extent that the Chinese government was involved in procuring these contracts, it strongly provides additional support for the notion that these companies are serving some kind of governmental interest. So it would be a violation. It would be circumstantial evidence.
Let me get to the issue of threats. Let's assume the PRC, the PLA invaded Taiwan or invaded the Philippines, or went to war somewhere in the South China Sea, and we were surging our Navy to the Indo-Pacific, to the Panama Canal. Are the companies now controlling both sides of the Panama Canal, the Chinese companies, subject to the PFC's national security laws that mandate cooperation with the military, with state intelligence agencies? Does anyone know that?
They're subject all the time. Yeah, they're subject to those laws all the time, virtually being on our companies. And they face, of course, consequences from compliance, which is the Chinese government.
Would that be a violation of the treaty? Isn't it a huge risk to us right now that the Chinese invaded Taiwan, invaded the Philippines? They could go to these two companies saying, hey, shut it down, make it hard, sink a ship in the canal. And wouldn't they be obligated to do that under Chinese law if they were ordered to by the PLA or the CCP?
I don't know if they'd be obligated, but certainly the Republic of China would have many tools of leverage and pressure on the companies. That's why the treaty specifically says that we can act not just to end actual obstructions to the canal. We don't have to wait until the canal is closed by hostile military action. That would be a suicide act that we can destroy, but rather that we can respond at the inchoate incipient of threats. And then it's up to the president to determine whether this is significantly robust or not to do it.
So, Professor, aren't we kind of walking up to the idea of a suicide pact because we got two big Chinese companies on both ends of the Panama Canal who, if there's a war in Indo-Pacific, Taiwan that involves us in China, these companies would be obligated to the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party and PLA? I mean, aren't we kind of walking up to a very significant national security threat already?
Yeah, certainly there's a threat. I think what makes the action of the Chinese government so difficult to respond to, important to respond to, is that they conceal this in sort of Will's gray, right, without direct control.
Well, let me ask you on that topic, as my last question, Professor. Let's assume that we find out, again, it wouldn't be surprising, I think you can almost assume it, that these two companies have Chinese spies or military officials within the ranks of the employees of the companies. Let's assume from that. Somehow that becomes public. But I don't think it's something that's probably true right now. So you have spies and military personnel within the ranks of these two companies that are controlling both ends of the Panama Canal. For you, Professor, and Chairman Sola, wouldn't that be a blatant violation of Article 5 of the Neutrality Treaty, if that were true? That probably is true.
I do think it would be a clear violation. As Dean Rusk, Secretary of State Ross said at the ratification, informal forces can violate Article 5 as well as formal forces.
Chairman Sola, is there any evidence of Chinese spies or other nefarious Chinese actors embedded in these companies?
Senator, we have no information on that. That's not another purview.
But you agree that would be a violation of Article 5 of the Neutrality Treaty? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Bolt.
Thank you, Commissioner McVeigh. Good to see you. Thank you for being here today. I am very concerned about China's large and growing influence in the world's infrastructure network. A company from Hong Kong operates 2 ports in the Panama Canal. On an exchange, and while the company is not Chinese state-owned, it is subject to China's national intelligence law, as we've been discussing. Moreover, a Chinese state-owned entity is currently building a bridge over the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is just one example of how far China's influence stretches. Their dominance in maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sectors lessens competition, creates supply chain risks, and creates opportunities for surveillance and information gathering. In order to facilitate the movement of goods throughout the world, it's essential to have a secure and level playing field, which we currently don't. Chinese current practices do not allow for that. The United States Trade Representative recently investigated China's practices in the commercial shipbuilding sector under Section 301, and recently concluded that their dominance is a burden to the United States commerce. A few decades back, we were the dominant country in commercial shipbuilding. In 2023, we built 5 commercial ships, and China built over 1,700, according to that investigation. So, what policies would you recommend to prioritize growth of the United States' influence in the maritime and logistics sector to compete with China and level the playing field?
Answer in less than a minute. Yeah. Senator Baldwin, it's very good to see you again. We were colleagues for one term in the House, and I appreciate that. I think the best I can answer in short term is amen to everything you said. And as an illustration, Senator Sullivan was talking about Hutchison Ports. That's actually the same company that runs a terminal on both ends of the canal. I am concerned about that. However, if we want to be concerned about that, all it should lose a lot more sleep than we're losing. Because if there's spies there, then there may be spies at other Hutchison Ports. And there are other Hutchison Ports in almost every part of the world. They own the largest container port in the United Kingdom, Felixstowe, which is responsible for nearly half of Britain's container trade. They control major maritime terminals like Argentina, Australia, Bahamas, Germany, Indonesia, Mexico, Myanmar, the Netherlands, South Korea, and Tanzania. If owning and managing adjacent ports from China not only has operational control over the Panama Canal, but also has over the Suez, Singapore Straits, Mediterranean Sea, and the English Channel. That's just one aspect of what you're talking about. That doesn't include the ships that are heavily subsidized, such that now I believe over half of new ships that are in the company on the Global Shipping Council are coming from China, not because these are bad companies, but because they're undercutting other things. And it's a problem that's been going on for 20 years, which makes it very difficult to answer your question. It is a long answer. This is not a problem that occurred last week. This is not something that President Trump identified. This was going on all President Trump's first term. It has been going on for decades and decades with the U.S. Republican and Democrat as president. The only thing I can say is I echo what Ranking Member Cantwell said, and I think others both parties have echoed that we need some sort of overall maritime strategy. We have to acknowledge this is part of our national security. Economic resilience is extraordinarily important, and I believe this is the greatest country in the world. We are countering some of these efforts, we can do it, but it has to become a national priority. And part of the challenge we're talking about outside borders of our U.S. Investing outside borders of our U.S. does not make very good campaign ad, but it may be necessary to secure, particularly with such an massive and frankly this open strategy that China has had.
Thank you for that answer. I know my time is now short. I will allow Professor Borovich to answer this for the record. But Professor, I'd like to ask for your help in finding productive actions we can take to overcome some of the challenges that are being discussed today. I'm confident that we can find bipartisan solutions to pursue. It is my view that we should strengthen our relationship with Panama through mutually beneficial actions. For one, we should have a fully staffed embassy. The United States went without an ambassador to Panama from 2018 to 2022, largely due to partisan gridlock in the Senate confirmation process. So what additional strategies would you suggest the U.S. pursue to encourage Panama to enhance its security relationship with us, the United States of America, rather than China? And how can we leverage the strength of the American private sector to encourage more investment in the important infrastructure projects where China currently has a strong presence, in fact, dominance?
So thank you. So my understanding of the Chinese advantage is that to the extent that they're willing to use their government wealth to consistently underbid contracts, they have an advantage that can't be beat. And thus leading these kind of issues to contracting, American companies are potentially at a disadvantage. I think one potential action would be to make clear to Panama that based on these changes that occurred over the years, increasing Biden's control over Hong Kong, passage of national security law, the Belt and Road Initiative, the military civilian integration doctrine plan, that contracts with Chinese-based companies are considered suspect and incompatible with the neutrality regime of the treaty that would at least give American companies and other approved private companies a fighting chance.
Thank you. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes or no, quickly for the three of you, just for the record. Is the China investment into the Panama Canal a direct threat to U.S. national security? Yes or no? Mr. Sullivan, start with you down the back. Thank you.
I haven't had information as an industry association center.
Okay. All right. And we've talked some about the neutrality treaty, which I think is of concern to all of us. And as I have looked at this, and I appreciated Senator Sullivan's questioning on this, we look at how President Trump is going to push forward with getting this issue addressed. And we've heard a bit about this from our shippers that are looking at what happens coming out of the port of Memphis. And I think that the government of Colombia learned a lesson last week that we are not going to go soft on some of these issues. And when you look at the fact that the U.S. is a primary user, it is the primary user of the Panama Canal. And we are also Panama's largest provider of direct foreign investment. I think those two things should be significant. Our foreign investment into Panama is $3.8 billion annually. This is what people are looking at this issue. So, Professor, let me come to you on this, and we thank you for joining us remotely. Shouldn't our investment in Panama be contingent on their adherence to that neutrality committee, ensuring Panama and Panama alone would control that canal?
Certainly, that is an action we can take to enforce the treaty and to enforce our understanding of the treaty. That's an action we can take even without the treaty. So, to the extent that the United States considers the Chinese operation of facilities around cannot be against its interests, they can certainly condition aid and economic relationships on the exclusion of China. Now, the United States is still not work that way, and that may be one of the reasons why, as we heard in testimony, China has basically made inroads everywhere. But for that, you don't even need the treaty. Certainly, if we consider the treaty to be violated, measures like that far short of the armed force authorized by the treaty would be
and
reasonable.
Professor, let me interrupt you there because I do want to move on. I think that as you look at how China has used the Belt and Road Initiative, and we've talked some about that this morning, we know that they have pushed the digital yuan. And I am concerned, given their control over much of that infrastructure around the canal, that they would attempt to force U.S. shippers or our allies to bypass the dollar and use the digital yuan as they are in other countries where they're practicing diplomacy and where they're expanding the Belt and Road Initiative. So, Chairman Sola, could you speak for a moment about the potential for fee manipulation with the CCP? Because, as I mentioned, we are hearing a good bit about that. We are hearing that the toll structure disadvantages U.S. companies, that the Canal Authority has begun charging millions of dollars to skip the queue. And these fees put in bulk shippers in an adverse position, and these bulk shippers have a huge impact on ports along the lower Mississippi River. And, these exorbitant fees are there unless you're going to face delays at the canal. And then the impact of hearing these Chinese companies would preference the yuan as opposed to the dollar.
Thank you, Senator. The fees that I think we are looking at, or we have been looking at, the reason we went there was because of the auctioning of the slots. And so what Panama did is they had a smaller percentage, maybe 20% allocation, then moved up to 30% and 40% because it became a moneymaker for them. So as they were doing...
Okay, and let me interject here. The auctioning of the slots gives these the right to skip the queue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so goes for the continue.
So the auctioning of the slots, maritime laws come first, but Panama always put a certain percentage aside. And they started to put more and more. So we got a lot of complaints. We got like complaints from LNG carriers that paid $4 million to go through. We got a lot of complaints from agriculture. They didn't have the money to pay to go through because their goods were going to go down. So if you look at the financial statements, I'm under the financial statements of everybody, but the canal increased the amount of revenue that they had from about $500 million to $1.8 billion in the last 3 years just because of those fees. So this is what is very concerned to us and for the merchant.
And have you seen a tendency to preference the digital yuan over the dollar?
I've heard of digital one, and I also heard of it used in international shipping as a currency. It's something that I would say that we have an eye on because we have digital exchange rule coming up, but we will keep monitoring it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I can't help but think, as we debate this issue of the Panama Canal, well, it is important. If you want to look at what's happening right now, as in the middle of the night last night, when an executive order was issued by, well, not an executive order, just a memo by the acting budget director, which put a pause on all federal funding for not only NIH research and cancer trials, and not only Head Start, and people are in panic and calling their offices. It's also a severe problem for trade and America's innovation. Freezing all federal funding already granted to improve port and freight infrastructure through the port infrastructure program seems to me a major problem we should be addressing when we're talking about America's shipping interests. But we'll go to the topic at hand. The Panama Canal is a critical trade corridor that allows for American farmers and other businesses to reach international customers. I care a lot about the shipping issue, as many of you know, Senator Thune and I joined forces 2 years ago to pass a very important bill that took on the international shippers in terms of giving more power to the maritime contingent in taking on the rates they were charging businesses and farmers and manufacturers in America. And it actually immediately had an impact, as they knew what was coming their way, and continue to. I'll get to that in a minute. But I do want to raise with you, Commissioner Maffei, do you know of any instances where the United States has been singled out or treated unfairly under the neutrality treaty in the operation of the canal?
I do not. I would add that one of the reasons why I'm saying the U.S. is disproportionately affected by rates, canal fees, and other kinds of fees that canals, because the United States is disproportionately utilizes the canal.
Right, and that's something that would affect the total number of fees, and we know is a critical trade corridor, and wants to continue to use that corridor and be treated in a fair way. But I do think one of the things that hasn't been brought out as we look at the period of congestion or reduced capacity at the canal, which we know have occurred, like we saw with last year's drought, can delay shipments, increase transportation costs, potentially leading to higher consumer prices. Commissioner, what steps can be taken to minimize disruption and prevent cascading costs for consumers during periods of operational strain? Yes.
The main thing is that companies and experts need to make sure they have a resilient supply chains. Depending on one sea lane is all we see in this very, very difficult world. One of the things by the panel now is important. In fact, maybe a big reason, and a particular trend that, or launch trend is the fact that it's there in case something goes wrong on the other end of the world. Say, for instance, the Suez Canal. Right? It's that lack of redundancy right now is a big problem, and frankly, one of the reasons why it costs a lot, because if you have to go all the way around Africa or go all the way around the Americas, you are taking fuel ships.
Thank you, Mr. Chronic. In your testimony, you described how drought reduced imports at U.S. ports. Do these reductions affect prices for American consumers, or could they?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I love that short answer. Ocean Reform Act, I mentioned. Back to you, Commissioner. Has that law improved the ability of shippers to have unreasonable charges waived or refunded by ocean carriers? As we know, this has been a major problem for carriers, which can translate into prices, and talk about how it has empowered shippers to file complaints against unreasonable practices by carriers. By the shippers, of course, you know what I mean. I don't mean the carriers themselves. I mean people that are trying to do business and sell their stuff.
American exporters, American exporters. Absolutely.
Look,
I don't know but yes, at tremendous effect. We've seen instances of waiving or forgiving potential emergency or even refunding no waive. We've seen settlements go up with major carriers. We've seen cases filed so many. In fact, we've had one administrative law, now we have 3, and they still have 2 cases. So huge impact.
Mm-hmm. And are you concerned, and where I started, are you concerned about fees and funding that have already been granted for port and infrastructure improvement right now, given what we're trying to do with American ports? We can make stuff here and ship it instead of having it all come to us.
That's what I'm saying. Federal Maritime Commission, we try to do an awful lot with less. As the New York Times reporter has pointed out, we are funded approximately our entire annual budget, about 1 hour of the container ship industry profits during COVID pandemic. Because of that legislation and subsequent appropriation, that more like 68 minutes now is still a fraction of it. I don't know where.
Well, of course, from this 12 hours ago, midnight from an unknown bureaucrat. So our hope is that we will be able to give you those numbers to show what will happen to infrastructure if we simply freeze funding for all these things across America. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank the panel for being here. It's good to see you all. Mr. Stoll, the November 2024 report from the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, it details China's efforts to deepen ties with countries across Latin America and the Caribbean. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask you to name and consent to that report to the record. Mr. Chairman, if that's okay? Without objection. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I think it's important to view the Chinese Communist Party CCP activities in the Panama Canal Zone in the context of CCP's broad efforts to further access Latin American markets and strong American interests in our own backyard. Mr. Stoll, would you agree with that? That you see the CCP activity and hopefully to interrupt America's interest in the region?
Definitely an economic interest, Senator.
I was able to travel here a few years ago to see this firsthand and see CCP's encroachment. So, in your experience, are there noticeable differences in port operations when they're controlled by Chinese companies and financed or backed by Chinese loans? And if so, would you explain that?
We have a wonderful example because we have a U.S. port there, SSA, on Washington State, and I actually worked on the development of that many years ago and helped develop that industry, a former United States Navy submarine base, and we'll cover that. As far as the 2 ports that we have, they're completely different. One is a major infrastructure footprint, and also a container port that's moving 4 million containers a year. That is almost, I mean, that's really phenomenal amount. That's more than Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and you're probably going to get Tampa, a little bit of Jacksonville in there, and get that type of volume. And on the other side, we have a very small port, a very strategic port on the Atlantic. So how are the operations done? Yeah, I don't know how they don't make money. I mean, if you want them to break down to it, they've been operating port for 20 years and they haven't made any money. So they haven't been able to pay the government. That's what concerns me. That we're on a level playing field with the American port.
Appreciate that, Mr. Crank. What would be the consequences for U.S. trade and for the U.S. economy if access to the canal was suddenly revoked or significantly increased for U.S. shippers?
It would be pretty catastrophic, Senator. And we have an example of the experience with the denial of the Red Sea right now. Being able to use that and as Chairman Maffei said, having to go around down the continent of Africa, 40% longer voyages, significant more costs, improved maintenance, fuel, even emissions.
Do you have a ballpark in the difference if they're able to transit the canal versus go around stuff like South America?
I don't have a figure. I can tell you in days and depends. So it's about 30 days if you can go through the canal. About 40 days right now because we can't use the Suez Canal if you want to go and go from say Asia cargo down to the US.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll, another question. China's pouring billions of dollars into infrastructure projects all over Central and South America. And one example is in Ecuador. China made a deal with them to fund $3.4 billion hydroelectric dam. There's 17,000 cracks already, and there's a lot of corruption. Ecuadorian officials, they've been imprisoned, sent on bribery charges. Using that as an example for the region, the strategy of China is clear to take, and this is in the words of Ecuadorian minister, the strategy of China is clear that they want to take economic control of countries. And Panama, for instance, is about 7.7% of their GDP, as I understand it. So using Ecuador as an example, should Congress be concerned that China could extract significant leverage over Panama, given the outsized role and revenue from the canal that plays in their finances? You turn your mic on.
Yes, Senator, it very well could, and I believe that we are in a very fortunate position now with Secretary Rubio, who knows the area very well and knows China.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Senator, United States, you should also look at Port Chente in Peru. It'll fit that pattern.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to all of you for coming on out here. I'll be honest with you, when I talked to some of my constituents in New Jersey about this, they mostly understand this issue right now because of words of President Trump. So if you might want to start there and work backwards. So Chairman Zola, President Trump said, quote, China is operating Panama Canal. We can give to China, give to Panama, and we'll take it back. I guess I just wanted your assessment there. Is China operating the Panama Canal?
Chairman, Senator Kim, I haven't just read anything that President Trump says. He has a different view than I do. What I can say is that the Panama Canal is operated, as far as I know, by the ACP, the Panama Canal Authority, and they're very efficient at operating the canal and the throughput that they're able to do.
So you're saying, from your knowledge, you don't know of reason to believe that China is operating the Panama Canal, from the knowledge you have?
From the knowledge that I have on whether Senator, what we have here is the Panama Canal Authority is the authority where people will pay into the Panama Canal. I think that if you allow me to, if a company is able to operate both ports.
So you're talking about Hutchinson ports, right?
Yes.
So we're talking about Balboa and Cristobal ports, right?
And they're subsidized.
Just subsidized. I guess the question to you is, does Hutchinson port actually control the locks of the canal?
No.
Does it control directly the entrance to the canal?
The both ports are in operational control of the canal. In order for the ports to operate the canal, has to give them a special permit. And the reason is because when they're bringing the ship in or bringing the ship out, they block the traffic of the canal every single time.
I see. So
they have to pass.
Is Balboa or Cristobal ports under the jurisdiction of the Panama Canal Authority?
They've been given by the Panama government the concession. However, they're in the operational range of the Panama Canal.
Does that make those two ports under the jurisdiction of the treaty?
Let me say this, because I was in Panama in the treaty when the Panama Canal was turned over. We didn't just give back the Panama Canal. We also gave back all the land and all the water on the entryway to it, and including what we had with military bases along there. So as soon as you come out of the Panama Canal, and I invite you to come, I'll be happy to take you. As soon as you come out of the locks, you run into Corazon, which is a former military base. Corazon is run not by Panama, by the Panama Canal Authority, it's run by the Panama government. After you pass that, you run into the port of Balboa. But what I'm trying to say is that when we talk about Panama Canal Authority, they operate only where the ships go up and go down and come out. After that, you have where pilots. Where pilots will take you on the boat and take you off. So is it operational control of Panama Canal? Yes, because pilots are the ones that have to bring you in there and bring you out. And again, every time a ship goes into one of those ports, they block the traffic of the Panama Canal.
No. Well, look, I guess I wanted to just ask you kind of directly then, what is your assessment of the Panama Canal Authority, in terms of their ability to administer the canal?
I think Panama Canal Authority and their independence, if you read my opening statement, and my written statement, they've done a fantastic job. And Panama has been running it now for 25 years. They've given $28 billion to offers of government in those 25 years. In the 25 years, the two ports that we call they've contributed zero. So I don't understand why Panama would allow those two ports to operate and take them into jeopardy what they have the operations that they do have in town.
I'll just end here on this. I thought you had a really poignant point in your written testimony where you said we must protect the independence of the Panama Canal Authority and the efforts by all their interests in Panama, the dignity and professionalism of the authority must be stopped. And I would just say that as we talk about this committee as a government, that we should not follow the same words as well. Try to have nuance and precision with words we use. Otherwise, it very much looks like some of what we talk about is going to be perceived as undermining the Panama Canal Authority. And then you said that you warned that would be something that would actually boost up China's capacity in the region.
Ports that we have in question. So when we look at the end report of those two ports, they have a hidden, or not a hidden, it basically says that they have local partners that are not identified. So I believe that if we had those identified, we would know more.
Yeah, more precision there. Thank you so much, you as Chair.
Thank you, Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want the committee to just imagine that Taiwan is under siege. CCP, determined to crush Taiwan's resistance, prevent a U.S. response, activates a multi-pronged strategy, leveraging its control over global ports and shipping infrastructure. At the Panama Canal, one of America's most vital trade arteries, handling 40% of U.S. container traffic, Chinese controlled ports at both ends suddenly close. Ships carrying food, oil, and military supplies are turned away because of technical difficulties, paralyzing the global economy. Gasoline prices soar, supermarket shelves empty, and supply chains collapse within days. China's state-owned ZPMC, which supplies 80% of U.S. port cranes, has equipped their cranes with cellular modems that create exploitable vulnerabilities. These cranes at U.S. ports mysteriously malfunction, halting critical operations. Factory closed, millions lose their jobs, and the economy grinds to a halt. While this scenario may seem hypothetical, it is entirely plausible. Therefore, the canal must remain neutral, and the U.S. must ensure the CCP does not encroach on our vital economic and national security interests. In 2017, Senators Markey, Schatz, and Rubio urged President Trump to address China's aggressive maritime actions. The warnings apply today as China's growing control over critical infrastructure, ports, and strategic waterways block the Panama Canal pose an unacceptable threat. America is sleepwalking into a carefully laid Chinese trap. Unfortunately, people like President Trump aren't falling for it. I'm glad to raise this issue. This dangerous complacency must end. That's why last week I introduced a Senate resolution to safeguard the Panama Canal from Chinese influence. It calls on Panama to expel Chinese entities in foreign control and honor its neutrality under the 1977 transfer agreement. The cost of inaction is too great. I want to offer this up for anyone, but I think the biggest concern here is this Belt and Road Initiative. We've talked about agreeing that trap, which is true. And building a bridge in Bangladesh is very different than this. I mean, there are reports of, the CCP building airports, and then when people are critical of the CCP, all of a sudden flights are canceled. Controlling the grid, they can turn it off, and they can turn it off. And there's just no way on God's green earth that China can control the Panama Canal. So however you want to define it, I hope I don't correct this is an issue that affects America that should not be partisan, and hope we're not blinded by the fact that President Trump has come out so boldly on this. But we shouldn't tolerate this. When is the state, they have operational control. We can get into the semantics of the port authority versus the control. Operational control of the Panama Canal is real by CCP. The witnesses have also stated the Chinese company got a sweetheart deal. No bid contract for control, operational control to the port. So I guess I want to ask, I boss you, I have much time for questions, but Professor Katorovich, I do want to ask you, as it relates to the treaty, and Gladstone Cruz, or Chairman Cruz has called this up, because there are real concerns about treaty violations here. What are the most blatant? What are the most obvious? Is the unfair, is it the fact that we're being charged more? Is it the fact that these are Chinese-owned companies that are controlled by the CCP? What are the top 2 or 3 reasons that you argue that are in fact in violation of the treaty?
So again, I think different ethnic charges and fees are less of an issue because they don't discriminate across countries. We pay more because we use more, but it's not nationally discriminatory. The presence of Chinese companies, especially Chinese state companies, but not do raise serious issues and concerns the neutrality of the treaty. And now, going to the earlier question, the canal, for purposes of the neutrality of the treaty, is not limited just to the actual locks of the canal and trends of the ships of the canal. According to Annex 1, Paragraph 1 of the treaty, it includes also the entrances of the canal and the territorial sea of Panama adjacent to it. So all of the air activities we're talking about are within the neutrality regime, the geographic scope of the neutrality regime of the treaty.
So the most dead-on hit here is the treaty specifically prevents foreign operations, and that's exactly what we have.
Yeah, so to the extent these companies are in fact de facto controlled by China, this is something that can threaten the neutrality regime of the treaty.
Senator, may I point you said we all said that China had operational control. I believe that China currently has operational control of the Panama Canal. I'm not sure.
I didn't say all of you did. I said one of the.
Let me say that I did believe there's a threat posed by the ownership. I do think though that if your assumptions are correct, you're way understating the problem. That's right, understating the problem because they also then control the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean Sea. I actually have to admit I'm a little confused why some of the senators asking questions are more concerned about the biggest port in the United Kingdom being run by the Chinese. Petraeus in the port near after the big Mediterranean is not just run by a Chinese link company; it's run directly by a Chinese owned company. And I was there, so they're onto something. But if you're just focusing on Panama, that's the only part.
No, I agree with you. I think the difference here is that we gave it away. Huge mistake. Both Missouri senators voted for it back then. Huge mistake. But the one thing we got out of it, was a guarantee of neutrality, and that's the issue here.
Thank you, Senator Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great hearing. Appreciate this opportunity today. I'd like to touch on something I haven't discussed today. That is, unfortunately, China is not the only hostile country that exploits Panama to endanger our national security. Iranian vessels under the Panamanian flag registry have been a problem for many years. Chairman, so can you explain how Panama has enabled Iran to evade our sanctions?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. About a year ago, when we were having this drought issue, there was also a lot of focus on Iran and how they were funding Hamas and the Houthis that were attacking the Red Sea. What we found was, what the United States found, is that Iranian vessels are sometimes flagged by Panama in order to avoid sanctions, so that they can sell the fuel that they have and they can take that money and then they can use it as they wish. Panama at the time had a very complicated process to deflag the vessels. It was an investigation, it was an appeal process. By the time that we would, after the Treasury would go ahead and identify one of those vessels, by the time that they were doing the appeals, like they've already changed flag to somewhere else. So when we went to Panama, we met with the Panamanian president. And I must say we were very impressed because he was 30 minutes late, but he was fixing relations with Venezuela at the time because the election was the day before. We explained to him the situation. The very next day, we met with the Maritime Minister, with USMC personnel, and Panama actually adjusted their appeal process so to make it more expedient. So if the United States or OFAC comes say that this Iranian vessel is avoiding sanctions, now we have a process in place to go ahead and do that. And 53 vessels were deflagged because of that.
If you would keep working on that, because it's a big deal. Thank you for that. And let me also go to him on this a little bit. And I've heard several times some of you acknowledge that the interest from China is an economic threat to us. But we come back to this defense. I think we've asked it, we're talking in different ways. Let me go back to the analogy of China puts a blockade on Taiwan and we're trying to move ships into that area quickly. Can any of you say this is not just an economic threat to the United States, but a defensive threat as well?
Defense is not our area of expertise. We'll give that to military experts. I would say that to me, an economic threat is a military threat. I mean, sort of, but it is.
Yeah, I just,
you're right. If Americans don't have that area.
Sure.
I would say that my biggest concern is that when the Chinese contractor gets contracted in Latin America, they usually put clauses in here. They bring their own workers in from China. And these workers are housed in camps outside. And these camps will have guards on them, and they will have, sometimes in Panama, for example, they have a water around the camps. So we really don't know who's in the camps. And I think that, to me, causes me more concern on who's in the camp and what are they doing. So these are actually sometimes thousands of workers that are brought in, for example, for the bridge or to do a port or something like this, to undercut the local labor.
Along those lines, we talk about dollars from China's spent. We far outspend China in the region. But if you look back on when Panama switched diplomatic recognition from Taiwan and Wade Bond's President Taiwan is an inalienable part of Chinese territory, coincided with economic investment from China in the region. Is that something overall, in addition to the canal, we need to watch?
Yes, we definitely need to watch out. And so we haven't been as avoided it. We really have not been competitive in Panama, and hopefully that we can be.
Okay, and just a few seconds. So this bridge, you put this up a couple times, the possibility of this bridge being damaged and closing the canal. It reminds me of going through TSA, the suitcase, going through the TSA. Is there any reason that China can't watch or do whatever they want from this bridge to see what get intel from these containers? And does that concern anybody?
But definitely concern Southern Command, because they brought up on numerous occasions that there could be some sort of surveillance or something like that.
Okay, I don't mind. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Mayo.
First of all, thank you, Chairman, for putting this hearing together. I think it's very timely. Mr. Sola, I heard you say, you've navigated the canal 100 times. I mean, that's you have a pretty good experience. I want to turn the testimony a little bit different direction. You obviously haven't been there that much. Tell me for the testimony, what are the people, and you obviously probably been in my home country where I was born in Colombia, what is the sentiment among the people for how they feel about America?
Senator, I have many friends and family and professional relationships in Panama, and the bond between the United States and Panama is very deep. It's almost like the United States and Great Britain, for example. The Panamanians love baseball, they love basically a lot of the same things that we do. The people are absolutely wonderful.
Now, they've suffered through catastrophically bad leaders, especially today. President Colombia, Pedro, we don't have to go down that path. But here's what I'd ask you is, obviously, we understand about shipping. We understand the issues, trade, that's been well documented. I think the treaty's clearly in violation. There's no question about that. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see us speedily get to a point where we get a resolution allowing the President to renegotiate that or cancel the treaty. But here's my question to the Darien Gap is a stone's throw away. Here from Annapolis, maybe not even a little bit further than that. It used to be this insurmountable piece of geography that separated Colombia from Panama, but it's now used as a massive human and drug trafficking operation. The presence of multinational gangs, multinational criminal organizations in that area, primarily, I will suggest, funded by the Chinese. You don't have to comment on that. But what is the impact of these transnational gangs, this increase in human and drug trafficking, doing to maritime activity along the canal?
Senator, the Darien Gap is one of the most dangerous tracks that I think anybody can do, and thank God for the new policy that we have on migrants and people coming into the country, because countless people have been harmed, died, or even very bad things happen to them through there. On transnational gangs, I mean, anytime there's money in the black market, they're going to go ahead and they're going to fill that void. So hopefully, I understand the Darien Gap is not being utilized very much right now because people are coming to the United States now.
What is the impact on maritime activity? In other words, security, Mr. Kramer, got to be an issue for your members. And having that increased presence of transnational gang activity, drug trafficking, you're talking about billions and billions of dollars. Cocaine production in Colombia is at an all-time high. What impact does that have on your members?
Senator, it's something we work hard on every day. The World Shipping Council has partnered out with the World Customs Organization and 58 customs agencies throughout the world. We ran actual operations to the data that we have on our supply chain, where there's anomalies, those customs officials and law enforcement for us to action it. A lot of it, the flow for commercial vessels, not to the United States, but to the European Union, is coming from the transshipment point in Panama, where our containers are being exploited and contaminated. And so we are working hard as we sit here right now on that problem.
And of course, the point I'm making is that China's influence there, whether we want to make a technical question as to what control means, it doesn't matter. When you have Chinese companies operating on both sides of the canal, having influence there through drug trafficking, they bring basic chemicals in Mexico, which makes its way here as fentanyl. We have enormous Chinese influence in Central South America. And so I'll go back to you, my final question. Do you think fundamentally the problem here is America just failed to engage properly with Latin America?
Yes, I do. We have not had presence there for long enough. The State Department has dedicated countless past Panamanian presidents for corruption, but we haven't had the DOJ go ahead and have any convictions on those. I think that if we did have a conviction one way or another, I think that would change the narrative quite considerably.
So just one quick follow-up. So if the U.S. took control back of the canal, if that territory was completely controlled, protected by the United States of America, what influence could we have in solving a variety of problems, the shipping ones that we talked about, but also having U.S. presence with military backup there in Panama, preventing transnational organizations, preventing human trafficking, preventing drug trafficking? Wouldn't that be celebrated among the free world as something that would be absolutely a net huge positive to the area?
I can say that is probably one of the top 100 areas in the world just because of geographical location and the amount of containers that they move. So I think any time that we can lower the amount of contraband being distributed around the world, we'd be doing a good service.
So, Mr. Chairman, like I said earlier, we ratified the treaty here in the United States Senate. I'd love to just de-ratify it.
Thank you, Sir Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. Really interesting hearing. In the year 1913, the governor of West Virginia said the Panama Canal would be critical to the state's coal industry. What was then true is true today. 11% of the cargo that goes through the canal is coal. Chairman Zolli, thank you for your military service, for your great insight into Panama. I know that the draft restrictions have been brought up already today, but the fact that bulk goods like West Virginia coal and other forms of energy cannot always be fully loaded to go through the canal is a major problem. I know they're investing about $900 million to try to make the canal more resilient, but what ways can we ensure that our state's energy exports are actually getting where they need to go when they need to get there?
It's a very good question, Senator. And the bulk and the coal are probably the most affected by the draft restrictions that we have. Container ships and passenger vessels have a much larger draft. We talked extensively with the Canal Authority and also with the government of Panama on how they need to add water, fresh water to the system. They're losing about 1% a year. So if they continue this way, Panama Canal will be severely diminished by up to maybe 4% by 2050. So fresh water is definitely the key to this. I know that they're working with the Army Corps of Engineers to do some of those studies, and they've put a variety of options out there for the Canal Authority to go ahead and give advantage of.
Let me ask you a simple question. Why would they be in opposition to putting more fresh water in the canal?
I don't believe about the Canal Authority.
Some easy, so maybe
Canal Authority is the issue that happened maybe 10 years ago. Environmentalists restricted what the watershed was a canal, and that law has just recently been overturned, so now the canal actually has access to the watershed. So what they have to do is a major infrastructure project to go ahead and pull that water in. And at the same time that they're saving up their recent fees for the major infrastructure project, they're getting more and more money to the national coffers. So it's about $2.4 billion right now, and specifically for the infrastructure project.
Is that the $900 million infrastructure project reference? Is that the same project?
I believe it's a real deal.
Yes. So along with that issue going through the canal, not just offloading, I mean, it's hard to offload coal out of bulk container. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do if you can even do it. Is this whole thing about congestion pricing kind of over from New York, are they, congestion pricing at the canal where you can now bid and get the lines, and then the line can be like 14 days later, even if you're at the line? This is probably what Senator Sheehy wondering, like, how did I get in front of him kind of question. So how is that working? Is that fair? And who makes the that to me? You're talking about corruption. That to me sounds like you could really bag somebody's pockets here to be able to jump the line and have a significant effect.
Yeah, Senator, it is an auction system. It is being utilized more and more. And what I'm most concerned about, continue to be most concerned, but not necessarily right now because the unusual draft restrictions are all going on if there is no water shortage. The regulatory revenue has increased in terms of the canal, but what really increased is the special revenue that they get from overseas and from this auction. That revenue has gone up about close to 300% for other transit services. So that's a huge amount. It also is an Alex mean. I know a lot of the ocean carrier companies got a lot of heat, but they're making more money during the lack of congestion during COVID. Well, this is similar. They're buying fewer transits, and at the same time they're making more money because of market mechanism. Talking about the Chinese side, this is a capitalist, but it is a different way of allocating space that they're more or utilizing more and more to make more and more money. I have no idea. To the best of my knowledge, money is going to back to paying coverage. I don't know if any needs to adapt that. But that is the cost. And as I said before, it does disadvantage certain kinds of cargo if because they may feel that they don't, they're on a ship which doesn't prioritize its time passage as much as other kinds of cargo. I don't know how that fixes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Chief.
How long would it take China to block the canal for usage if they decided to do it? I know you're not both your experts. You've been to the canal 100 times. You're all experts on the industry. If they wanted to deny our usage of it, how long would it take them to do it?
Senator, I can say that prior to the year 2000, the canal had a quick reaction force that kind of took all possibilities into consideration, either it should be installed in the canal or be able to move on out. I don't know what those capabilities or what the planning for that would be.
So effectively, we don't have a response. But if China, I don't like the mindset that's kind of debated that there's this far off hypothesis.
Well, you're not talking to a military expert. We're here because it's commercial reasons.
This is a military question. If you were in the canal 100 times and you are a maritime expert, a couple years ago, remember, we give a jive from the Suez Canal. That's not a military operation. That's a ship that turns sideways. So if China chose to, how fast could they close the canal to our usage?
You could probably do a similar thing to more be active terrorism that would be because they have facilities there. Most of the discussions involve the economic threats that China is bringing because of the Belt and Road Initiative and having these investments in other countries. But, it's not hard to close off the waterway. Panama Canal is actually vulnerable in terms of infrastructure. It's not, this is not a fort or militarily reinforced location. You're getting to the end of my knowledge of that. It would not take long. I don't know what it has to do with it. It's not accelerated because they have people out of port. Unless, likely it's easier to infiltrate those ports with Chinese spies and this other kind of thing. But that's totally out of my purview. That's more something.
I don't think it's out of purview. I think the reality is the canal is an economic engine that is also a national security engine. And I appreciate, I'm not trying to be better saying traps. I'm just trying to ask a common sense question, which is we get dance around. I'm not an expert in this, I'm an expert in that. But the canal is vulnerable, as we stated.
I guess why would they bother the military operation when they can get what they want with non-military means if they can have influence in other ways?
That's the part of the question. Okay. Because we segregate ourselves artificially with they do not. We segregate ourselves, well, military, talk about intelligence, talk about economics. They don't have it's all over. They don't draw the leash between economic society and the military one. And the bird may not look like Pearl Harbor. It may look like an everyday ship that decides, it pulls in the locks and blows itself up, and the locks are not functional for usage we can't support inter-ocean fleet transfer. And our ability to defend it, as you referred to, Chairman, is now inhibited by the fact we no longer have military infrastructure around the canal. We did just recently as 1999. So from a commercial perspective, the shipping companies have concerns over the security of the narrow waters, along the Suez Canal, which are also about Panama. Is that a concern that's thrown around the borders of the largest shipping corporations in the world?
So I think something to think about every day, and really around in sharp with the Red Sea that it was like a big flamingo. There's black swan that has come up, and there's other pink flamingos that you can see, but you don't act. But no one really thought a lot that one of the most important waterways in the world could be denied, and moreover, that could be denied for such a sustained period. The good news is that
we not denied by a disaffected non-state actor of Bedouins running around with rocket launchers, who also managed to be a 20 war in Afghanistan. But my point to saying all this is we have debated operational control of the canal. It seemed very clear to all of us that a very simple act can debilitate the canal and eliminate our ability to use it in a matter of minutes. No more. We had no ability to intervene to stop that. To me, that means we do not have operational control of the canal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, and Senator Young, in all space. I'll ask a couple questions and give him a few minutes to get here. Chairman Solo, you have a deep understanding of the Panama Canal from personal experience, in addition to your work with the Maritime Commission. One example of China's influence with the Panamanian government was the effort to seize land near the Pacific end of the canal to build a new Chinese embassy, including your land. Can you describe your personal experience, including how Panama ignored property rights as it sought to appease China within the embassy?
Yes, Senator. About 10 years ago, the maritime business of my family expanded tremendously, and we were given a concession to build a marina on the Pacific area of Panama. We also incorporated a cruise component to that. We brought the cruise companies to Panama. This would have been the very first cruise port in the Pacific. We spent millions of dollars on consultants with Atkins Global, Moffett & Nichols, all the best consultants in the world, and everything was fine. When Panama turned over to Belt and Road, they told us that concession was going to be nationalized. Then what they did is they rescinded our concession for the property. We were going to build the cruise port for $30 million, U.S. private funds. They gave the concession to a Chinese competitor and paid the Chinese competitor today $300 million to build that cruise port. It's going to take many people 375 years to get back. I'm from Miami. That's the most expensive cruise port in the world by far, by passenger. In addition to that, they took where our land is going to be from Marina. They designated that to be the embassy for the People's Republic of China. So what happened next is absolutely appalling, because when I went to the U.S. Embassy and I went to the Commerce Department, they told me to fill out a complaint. When I filled out the complaint, I went to my senator at the time, was Bill Nelson, and I remember that I was denied being able to file a complaint because the land that the Chinese embassy, or the land was going to be used by the Chinese embassy, my environmental permit for the marina was going to expire in 6 months. So the United States Commerce Department would not even allow me to file a complaint. So I brought that issue here, and thanks to the good work of at times with Chairman Melton and Chairman Wicker, we were able to unwind that. After about 6 years, Panama did the right thing and returned the land to my family.
Very instructive. Senator Young.
Thank you, Chairman, for holding this important hearing. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. The Panama Canal underpins our current economic strength and national security. When 40% of U.S. bound container traffic depends on a single waterway, we cannot afford unilateral toll hikes. that co-cap competition and leave our smaller carriers or our Midwestern exporters on the hook. For instance, in my home state of Indiana, manufacturing firms and farmers rely on consistent, reasonably priced shipping routes to move heavy machinery, auto parts, and ag products like corn and soy. If the Canal Authority auction system prices them out, the ripple effects on American jobs and supply chains could be devastating. Chairman Sola, given our enormous stake in the canal's operation, do you believe Congress or the FMC should more aggressively use existing legal authorities or even create new legislative tools to block or penalize hold practices that disproportionately harm U.S. shippers and exporters?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. It's open good and down, so that you know.
Fantastic.
I do believe that we should continue to monitor the situation, and if we do need more regulations or statutes, that we would come back to Congress, that we get our marketing and instructions from you. Moving the agricultural products that we get out of the Midwest all over the world and through the country, not only do we focus on Panama now, but we also focus on about $5 trillion worth of goods coming in and leaving the United States here, Federal Maritime Commission, so it's definitely one of our main concerns.
Thank you. I'm not surprised. I always tell people Indiana is a maritime state. If you think about our dependence on waterways and our shipping lines and all the rest, so you're certainly proving that. But so we will stay in touch, and if you in the future like outline any mechanisms or measures that you think would be effective to help ensure fair treatment for our interests, please let me and others on this committee know. When the two Panama Canal treaties were signed, we lived in a different world, one where Chinese state-backed actors didn't wield strong influence over global infrastructure, and issues like drought were rarely factored into international agreements. As we all know, times have certainly changed, but the United States is still the canal's biggest customer, and quite frankly, we have every way to expect an operational framework that acknowledges our modern security and economic challenges. States like Indiana, with robust exports, feel these impacts, even if we're far from the canal itself. Chairman Sola, and I'll allow others to respond. In light of evolving conditions, especially increased foreign investment from China, do you believe the U.S. should explore a more comprehensive update or supplemental protocols to these decades-old treaties?
I definitely believe that we should support U.S. investment, and not having an ambassador for so long has been detrimental to us, especially as the case that I just mentioned earlier. We didn't have an ambassador, and we had a U.S. company in need of service. So, however, we can promote U.S. investment, especially in infrastructure. This is where China is definitely beating us with the Belt and Roads, but they understand that. And I believe that, you know, our Exim Bank and our EFC is so limited in what they can do by restrictions that they have that we're not able to invest in infrastructure like we should.
I hope the administration will prioritize these ambassador spots as nominations are made. I will prioritize it in the Senate. My colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle will be warm to that nomination moving quickly, something both parties, frankly, have fallen short on in recent years is prioritizing these. Other comments, Mr.
Yeah, well, Senator, one price when I switched to the House, I actually I agree with the chairman on what he said. I will say that certainly, you know, we need to look at other kind of ways to keep U.S. companies in positions where they can truly compete with the Chinese and some of these things. Blaming it all on Panama really misses the point. I've seen the same thing in Greece, where Greece didn't want to give a concession of its largest port to a Chinese company, but because it's handled difficulty, it was getting pressure from international organizations such as the IMF, the European Commission, and the United States to do so. So I just ask you to look at that. I do want to say one quick thing right about the cost, and as I said before you were able to get here, the Panamanians are making far more on it now than ever before. This is a bad thing, as long as it's going to the right place. They were really making money is on these auctions, and that is why is made sure I'm sure the chairman, and that is where we are looking at potentially using our authority under Section 19 of the American Marine Act, where we could, if we can show that it is basically a problem with foreign trade in the U.S., interfering foreign trade in the U.S. There are certain things that we could do, but I do think we need more information before we can get conviction. We're certainly working on that, and we go that authority.
Thank you. Good to see you again, sir. Sir, Cormac, did you have anything?
We had discussed, Senator Young, on some of the infrastructure projects to make the canal more sustainable and viable, and how the United States, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, has already done some feasibility reviews of those projects. So that would certainly be something to take a look at to make the canal viable with an additional supply of fresh water.
Thank you. Chairman?
You spoke about renegotiating the treaties, and I think one of the things about treaties as an instrument of governance is not very flexible, and they don't really have automatic processes typically for easy. And I spent towards hearing, I spent a fair amount of time reviewing the ratification hearings in the Senate in 1978. And back then, principal concerns, the Senate was concerned with then, is Soviet and Cuba, actually, not China and Iran. So the world has changed a huge amount. China's role has changed a huge amount. And of course, back then, 1999 seemed very far off. 2025 seemed a world away. And as a result, I think it's useful to revisit treaties and to renegotiate and update the current events. And of course, the United States has a considerable amount of leverage they can use to seek such additional protocols to modernize these treaties to current events, current geopolitical reality.
Makes great sense, and I'm glad you spoke up. Thank you, Mr. Benborovich. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I want to ask a couple of follow-ups, and then we're going to wrap up the hearing. Commissioner Fay, you mentioned a minute ago determinations made that this was having negative impacts on U.S. trade. You said there are a number of remedies that are possible, and you didn't specify what those were, so I sort of asked what you were referring to.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things we can do with countermeasures, such as, sanctioning Panamanian ships, Panamanian flag ships. Panamanian flag is one of the major sources of revenue. It is number one of the legal flag in the world. There are several others, and I think I'd like to get back to Member Trump with the question.
Yeah, no,
if you don't mind, we can do joint answer. We'll put where our authority comes from, what we think we can do, and maybe even what we're concerned about, what we're willing to do.
Well, and I'll say this hearing's in a nice bipartisan administration of a lot of expertise. That's the reason you guys have the role you have, because you know what you're talking about.
I'm hoping my sharing of last week after a full term will result in a full, very successful term of our good friend and colleague, as Chairman. Maybe the friendliest transition in Washington.
Press control, I want to get back also to the exchange I had with Senator Young, and it harkens back to the opening exchange I had. We've heard testimony that Panama may well be in violation of this treaty in at least two regards. One, with respect to its obligation to keeping the Panama Canal neutral and the major concessions to China, the control that China has of ports on both ends, and the bridge across the canal, which has potential to shut down transit. We also heard testimony about the degree of revenue that Panama is taking that's potentially in violation of the obligation that tolls and other charges shall be just, reasonable, equitable, and consistent with principles of international law. I want to ask you, Professor, assume that the United States makes the determination that Panama is in violation of this treaty. I asked about remedies for, and you mentioned at the time military force. Military force is always one potential remedy. What other potential remedies are there? In particular, the consequence of being in breach of the treaty, the determination that the treaty is null and void, that the concession of control of the Panama Canal to Panama is no longer in force, and could that, under international law, result in the United States returning to operate in the Panama Canal? What's your judgment?
Yeah, I think treaties like this demonstrate that countries really need to think long hard before they go ahead treaty to cancel it. Because the United States is free to cancel this treaty or at any time withdraw from the treaty as well. But given that the United States has transferred control and sovereignty of the canal zone to Panama, the cancellation of the treaty would not necessarily reverse that concession. Concessions that have to do with sovereign control are not particularly reversible. For example, Israel made a deal with Lebanon to give maritime territory to Lebanon in exchange for peace. So 2 years ago, did not get peace. It's not going to consider cancel and get that territory back. Now, it is the case that America can take very offensive measures to insist on neutrality. And neutrality means the American firms in operation or otherwise can take other steps. That is something that can be done. But a kind of territorial control is not a clear remedy unless it is something that just accompanies the steps needed to restore the regime of neutrality.
All right, well, I want to thank all the witnesses for their important testimony here today. Senators will have until the close of business on Tuesday, February 4th, to submit questions for the record. The witnesses will have until the end of the day on Tuesday, February 18th, to respond to those questions. And this concludes today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned.